Welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you, and thanks for checking out the channel. Hope everybody's doing fantastic out there. Miami Dolphins with a first preseason game in the books. Already got a line issues. I talked already this week. It's a little bit concerning how much injuries already seem like they're a big part of the story of this camp, but I was not worried yet. If I could take you into the trust tree here for a second, I'm a little bit worried. Especially now that we got real offensive line issues, it appears. So Aaron Brewer hurt his hand, and Mike McDaniel said that he is going to be week to week. We'll find out maybe a little bit more. They'll get more of a diagnosis of what that is, or maybe this is going to be Mike McDaniel's vagueness that surrounds the Brewer injury. But yeah, it's a concern. It's a twofold concern, right? Because one, was the center they sought after, did not return. Connor Williams, who had success with them last year, though was coming off of an injury, is apparently ready for the season and did sign before the season got going. And so you let him go. You move Liam Eichenberg, who, played center already, and it's, it says that he wants to settle in at a place and find a home, and you want to find a home for him because he's a high draft pick. And now you're at a spot where he may have to go the rest of camp as the lead center and not settle into where he wanted to settle into, which was right guard, which he was hoping was going to be his home for the season. Now, look, I give Eichenberg, and I think everybody gets a little bit of a queasiness with Eichenberg as much as the next Dolphin. But, to be fair to him, he has been called into action in a lot of different spots, and he has not really been allowed to settle into one place his entire career, a la an Austin Jackson, where he's found a home, he's gotten to stick to that home, everybody looks at him as a redemption story, and that's that. And so now it appears you're in this spot where you have Liam Eichenberg maybe having to go to a place where he was like, oh, I was just getting settled into the place that I wanted to be settled into. And, what are they going to do? Now, they did start Jack Driscoll at center, this past game. So maybe they go with him, and instead of having to go to a direction where he, maybe they go with him there and they keep Eichenberg at right guard. Maybe. I don't know. It remains a mystery. And then we, of course, also have the Isaiah Wynn situation, which is when he plays, pretty solid. When he does, but can you count on him to play? Which is a little bit of the Teron Armstead conundrum as well. It's when he plays, fantastic, but when he doesn't, you got to get scrambling. And the Dolphins also, unfortunately, just lost Keon Smith, one of their linemen, with a torn ACL, and he had gotten the start at left guard for this last game. So you lose a little bit of depth there as well. So it's a little bit concerning. I don't think the Dolphins are screwed yet. But this does beg a couple of questions, right? We all looked at this last draft, and it's great that it seems like the Miami Dolphins, I don't want to be an ingrate, because it seems like if we're just going to go off preseason game number one, seems like the Dolphins have a pretty rocking rookie class, right? All of the rookies impress, and you didn't even get to play Chop Robinson or Mo Kamara. So that's pretty great. And Taj Washington is a guy who's probably not going to play this year, and people think he's really, really good. I know I'm getting that opinion from his college coach, who says he's his favorite player ever, but even Louis Riddick said he's one of the steals of the draft. So it feels like just in the early aftermath of this preseason, and I am putting a huge caveat on that, it just seems like the Dolphins are on their way to having a good rookie class here. However, one does have to ask, if you're in this situation right now, why did the Dolphins put themselves in this place where they're still left with all of these revolving questions in the interior of their offensive line? They drafted essentially two luxuries with their first two picks, right? Now, they may be really good luxuries, and take the best player, you're probably going to end up being in a better spot by taking guys who you're not going to miss on rather than reaching. However, it does leave you in this spot scrambling a little bit where you're like, all right, should the Dolphins have gone on the inside of the line rather than taking this monster in Patrick Paul, who looks like he's going to be intimidating as hell to go up against for years, but you're going to essentially have to sit him a year because Teron Armstead is your starter. Now, he may get in there anyway because it's Teron Armstead, but should the Dolphins have maybe covered their bases there a little bit? And then the same thing has to be said for the Chop Robinson. Like, hey, he may have to be sprung into action because you don't know exactly where you are with Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, but should they have covered their bases a little bit better? These are things that the Dolphins are going to have to answer. And I am not like the greatest NFL trade machine guy because I know there's much more ramifications with salary cap and all that, but like, you do have to be wondering, are the Dolphins looking at their situation right now and thinking they got to find some kind of a trade to rectify this and just be in a better spot? Because you still have plenty of time before the season. You're still at a spot. You have 2 preseason games. You have a dress rehearsal coming up next week. You essentially have 4 weeks. You have a month left until the season. Can you find something? Is there something out there where you're not getting fleeced, where the Miami Dolphins feel like they're just in a much more stable spot? Because I think that's the uneasiness of right now, right? Like, there's comfort because it's still a month out and maybe everything will be okay. If Brewer's hand, I think I saw in the Herald, like if it's a fracture, all right, maybe it's 4 to 6 weeks and maybe he toughs it out, but it is center, so you do have to snap, like, a little bit different. But if maybe this is not a dire situation, but it does feel like right now, like, oh my God, there's just such a haze of uncertainty right now that just leaves you bothered and worried. And I don't know, man, I'm seriously, like, I'm thinking after this first game and all of the injuries that took place, I'm like, man, are these guys going to be okay? Because it still feels like there's a bit of a revolving door. Maybe we'll have more of a set after these joint practices this week. I'm sure we'll get more information on where they are as far as length of injuries and who's going to step into those spots and how comfortable they are. But right now it just feels like, when you don't have the answers and you're left with just mysteries, you're left a little on edge. I will say, though, the Patrick Paul thing, monster. The memes of him just like trucking the dudes who are like the size of his leg are absolutely hilarious. So to have like a monster like that for years to come feels very exciting. It feels like the Dolphins are going to be in a good spot. But we're talking about the spot right now. Like, the thing that is concerning about it is you have so much invested into this year. You have a lot of veterans, spent a lot of money on Tyreek, Tua, Jalen Waddle, and right now it feels like it could still be crumbled if things are in this godforsaken offensive line, which is always the crux, it feels like, for Dolphins lore. Like, what is always the thing that has them in a spot where the fans are uneasy? There's usually one guy who feels like he's ruining everything. And now it's just an injury, and it seems to be an injury from center, which seemed like it affected a lot of things last year, and it's going to domino effect from in to out, and you're hopeful the Dolphins have the resources and, most importantly, the time to get it right. But for right now, going into this week of practice has everything a little bit on edge if you're a Dolphins fan. And so, I wonder if those talks are happening. I wonder if they are going to bring in anybody, if they're going to make a major swing, because with the cap space that they just opened up, do they make a swing on it this year and fully be in this spot where they're all the way in? Or do they feel confident that they can weather the storm here and be in an okay spot? These are going to be interesting questions the Dolphins have to ask themselves. But the uneasiness of it just makes you a little bit squirrely watching the big picture right now on the outside.